Welcome back to another episode of Green on the Greens. I'm joined once again by Brian Giuffra. Not sure this pairing really worked out considering what our picks looked like for the British Open last week, but we're going to try it again and see if we can make some money this time around. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm still devastated that Rory couldn't pull it out. I said he needed a 68 on Sunday. I was nervous when he flew that shot on too long because it was a little wedge, which he had been hitting those flip wedges so well all week. I'm still trying to get over it. The bankroll is definitely lighter for sure, and I'm looking to make it back this week.
Same here. Let's get right into the British Open and what we saw. I think honestly, despite Cameron Smith winning, I think the story is Rory. Not to That was an unintentional rhyme, also, but you know, I also thought he needed a 68, but I thought it was to beat Hovland, and I thought Hovland was going to stick around. I didn't see anyone shooting a 64 like Cam Smith did. And I think Rory, the way Rory played, also showed me that because everyone's talking about how he didn't make any putts, and yes, he did miss some makeable birdie putts all across that round. But at the same time, he played the conservative shot on what it felt like just about every hole, and it felt like he was trying not to blow up as opposed to going out and taking the tournament by the throat. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I mean, listen, the two 64s that Cam shot, it was because of his putter, right? I was saying this to a
Hmm.
buddy the other day. He didn't hit one like shot that was like, oh my God, that's a breathtaking shot, other than the putt on 17 from behind the bunker, not even the 8 foot par putt, which obviously was the difference maker in the tournament. But he just got hot at the right time, and I am totally blown away by his putting. That was the greatest putting performance I've seen since Tiger Woods. And I'll just say this that Rory, it was almost like watching England in that Euro. I don't know how closely you follow England, but like they were in London, the Euro final. The weight of the world felt like it was on Rory, and as he started missing those putts, and even that kid with his fingers crossed behind him when he
Hmm.
was teeing
Hmm.
off. Like it just felt like that weight got to him. He didn't make any mistakes, just like England didn't make mistakes. They lost in penalty kicks. I mean, this wasn't quite a penalty kick loss for Rory, but I was surprised with his game plan. I was also surprised with Hovland's game plan because Hovland seemed to want to play conservative as well. So I didn't really get it at all. That course was there for the taking. You have to always go out there and assume somebody's going to go out there and shoot an obscene number like that. The way that Cam did it was a little bit surprising to me because you assume you hit a couple like amazing shots. This was just hitting some ridiculous putts. And yeah, Rory was a heartbreaker for me, and I was so close to hedging with Rory, so close when Cam made that first birdie. I believe on nine that he made the first birdie of the five birdies that he made in a row. Was that on nine or was that
It
on
was
eight?
10. It was
It was
10.
10. Okay, so I'm my mistake. So I was off a little bit, but I remember like I was so close to hedging because he was still like it was like even money, and I was like about to hedge, and then I was like, you know what, Rory's gonna come and he's gonna birdie 9 and 10, and this is gonna bury Cam, and I was just like so wrong, but I was wrong about
I
everything,
I
so
went
no surprise.
I went through the exact same experience. I saw the number. I actually saw I saw Cam sink one putt early in the round. I think it was on, was it three that he sunk a like decently long one
Yeah,
or something like
and he
that.
was plus
And
600 at that time. I was looking at the odds the whole time. He was plus 600,
yep,
I
and
think,
I
at
was
that
like,
time.
when I saw that number, I was like, should I put a little bit of hedge because I had a unit and a half on Rory to win. And so I was like, okay, I can hedge this pretty easily, and not and come out on top because at that point I was like, Hovland just didn't look like he had the first 3 days, and so I was like, okay, this is, if anyone's going to catch him, it's going to be Cam Smith. So should I hedge now? And I feel like I bet emotionally in this situation, and I didn't hedge because I was like, oh, Rory's going to win. It's fine, we're fine, and obviously it worked out the same way. But let's actually talk about the winner, Cam Smith. I mean, that might have been, like you said, that might have been the best round of golf I've ever seen in a major championship, at least in recent memory, because he hit every shot that he needed to. And the one thing that really stood out to me is when you look back at the Masters when he was trying to chase down Scotty Scheffler, he got over aggressive. And that has kind of been his Achilles heel, is being aggressive when he doesn't necessarily have to be. And watching him yesterday, he was not aggressive. He was not aggressive in a self destructive way, and I think that honestly played a bigger part than his putting. is as great as his putting was, he didn't force the issue. He just let everything come to him and then had faith in his putter.
Yeah, he was conservative. I don't think that that was the greatest round of golf that I've ever seen on a Sunday in a major. I'm not willing to say that. I thought that was one of the greatest putting performances I've ever seen on a Sunday on a major, without question. It might have been the greatest clutch putting performance because he had to come back, and because I think he was actually lucky that he wasn't paired with Rory, by the way, because I think that he
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel any of that pressure that Hovland felt. Obviously everybody was following Rory. I bet you Smith, like, obviously people go a hole ahead to watch, the person coming through. But I don't think that anybody was watching Smith most of that day. I don't think until probably about like 12 or 13 that the fans started really being like, oh, this is the guy who's going to beat Rory. I think if he had been paired with Rory, it might have been a different story. He played within himself. It was a smart round. His putter got hot. He made the ones that mattered. And I think that to me was the difference maker, is that he made the putts. Rory didn't make the putts, and that was it. And then Rory was like, I mean, that putt on 17, it was the same putt that Smith had. It just was from a little bit further and a little bit more to the right, but it was a dead straight putt. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what he was reading, a full cup of break. There wasn't a cup of break on 17 unless you were putting from the other side of the hole. So I was shocked that he didn't make that. I thought for sure he was making that putt on 17. But as you said, I was emotional as well. So fool's gold is lost through emotions, and that's what happened.
Amen to that. So Cam Smith leads us into an interesting conversation that has been going on basically since after he won. When he was doing his post round press conference, he was asked about Liv, and he got a little combative with a reporter about asking him that after the British Open. And some people were like, oh, that's kind of a shaky answer, and that's kind of like the tone Brooks Koepka used like a week before he ended up leaving. Um, and then rumors started circulating that Cam Smith has signed a deal with Liv, or is going to sign a deal with Liv Golf. And that would be, I mean, I've made my thoughts on Live Golf pretty clear on here. I think it's fracturing the game in a way that's completely unnecessary and frankly stupid. But that would, to me, that is by far the biggest get that they could get right now. Is not only a reigning major champion, but a golfer who I think his best golf is still ahead of him. What do you think about the Cam Smith to Live rumors?
Well, listen, I think first of all, I don't watch golf to watch Cam Smith play golf. He's not a guy who I'm like, oh my God, I have to watch him play. Just being honest, there's not one player on Live that is like, I have to watch them play. The thing to me about Live is that their product just isn't good right now. And at the end of the day, that's why I watch golf, for a good product. I like the fact that the guys on the PGA Tour have to grind it out. That there's so much on the line that you can see the emotion. What are those guys on Live playing for? There's literally nothing. Those wins don't matter. Top tens don't matter. Making the cut obviously is a non-issue at all. They're all being compensated at an insanely high number that they'll never make on the PGA Tour. So like, I don't begrudge them. And it's funny, people get mad about where the money came from. I don't like that element of it. But at the end of the day, the thing I say about Live is it's just a bad product. And I've watched it a couple times. I have watched rounds just because I want to see it, right? That's my job, is I have to
Mm-hmm.
observe, and I try and be unbiased. Of course, I have a bias against Live, but it's because I just don't like the product. There's no reason why somebody has to go out there and grind for a win, right? You think about Tony Finau, what he's doing right now. He's flying back from Scotland and he's going right to Minnesota and he's playing in the 3M. Why? Because he wants to earn a win so that he can, guarantee himself exemptions into multiple different things, right? That's, to me, that's what it's about. And that's why, like, I can watch the PGA Tour even on a week like this when it's a worse field, because I know what it means for these people or these players, and why they're out there. I just don't get that feeling with Liv.
No, and I'm 100% with you. I mean, you can even take it back to what we just talked about with Rory. Like, you're never going to get, I mean, granted, that was a major championship, but I mean, you see heartbreak and that, the instances of golf's a cruel game all the time on the PGA Tour. And there's no even chance of that on Live because there's no stakes and it doesn't matter. Like, there's no emotional stakes, the financial stakes, no one, like, I've said this before, I don't watch golf to watch a guy win, however much money. I watch a guy I watch golf because A, the product is good, and B, because the emotional stakes. That's what interests me as a fan, and I feel like I am not alone in that.
And that's the whole thing to me. And it's like Faraday. People got all excited because Faraday's going over to live. Faraday sucks now, by the way. He's not a good
Hmm.
commentator. You can tell
Agreed. 100%.
he's not good. So like, I mean, Faraday isn't making me want to watch live. Cam Smith, as great of a player as he is, isn't making me want to watch live. Until they have a better product. And by the way, 54 holes, you're never going to get me behind that. And maybe I'm old like that, and
Yeah.
maybe maybe the next generation and in 10 years from now, those 18-year-olds who are going to be in the 28 to 30-year-old range. I'm much older than that, but like maybe those are the demographic that they're trying to attract. They're thinking 10 years down the line, and that people want to But like, by the way, who's watching golf on Saturday? Like I watch it during the majors and I'll watch it during big tournaments, but like I'm not glued to my TV on Saturdays. Like I'm out doing stuff. I've got family, I've got a life. Like that's the other thing about live that I really don't understand. I feel like they're just doing that just to be like catchy, like, ooh, this is different. Like, no, do something that's actually like cool, do like a match play that actually matters. But yeah, I can't get behind it for any reason. And I think to your point, it's just they're doing things right now just to disrupt the game and not to further the game. And I think that's what's upsetting about it.
I mean, that leads us right into the last thing I want to talk about before we get into 3M, which is Henrik Stenson is more concretely going to live golf. There are multiple reports saying he's doing so. And Henrik Stenson, he's a major champion. He's done a lot of great things in the game of golf, but at the same time, he hasn't been good in quite a while. Like he hasn't been a factor in golf for quite a while, and they're championing that they're going to champion this as like some big get. But really, all they're doing, and when he signs, he's going to be stripped of his European Ryder Cup captaincy. And I can almost guarantee you that is the entire reason that they're signing him, because they want to stick it to the Ryder Cup and stick it to all these purists who don't want Liv to succeed. And I think that goes directly to your point. They're trying to disrupt the game while going under the facade of grow the game, and that is extremely frustrating.
Listen, Henrik Stenson has been irrelevant in golf for nearly a decade. I mean, not quite, obviously, but like he's totally irrelevant. It's clearly a move aimed at doing something to mess up the Ryder Cup and to get, coverage around the fact that Stenson is leaving live because he values that more than the Ryder Cup. When in reality, what it is that, and I don't know Stenson's financial situation, right? I'm not going to sit here and but it's because of the money, right? He's doing this for the money. He's never going to make money playing golf ever again, the kind of money that he's going to get paid. Even if it's, let's say he's get $10 million, like he'll never make $10 million playing on the Champions Tour or playing in, PGA Tour events. Like I just pulled up his thing right here. He's made $184,000 playing on the PGA Tour this year. So, like you're not making $10 million. Like you'd have to do that. And obviously he's going to lose his PGA Tour card soon. So, yeah, Stenson, this is clearly a thing aimed at what I think, in my opinion, outside of majors, and quite frankly, some years it's better, is the best event in golf and the most significant event in golf. And if you look at what the Ryder Cup stands for, and even what St. Andrews stands for, I saw Dan Rappaport tweet this out, and I thought it was so true. Nobody cared about the money this week at St. Andrews, right?
No.
Obviously, there are some people who the money mattered to at the end of the week, but like they weren't looking at it like I got to go out there and make 5 birdies so that I make an extra $300,000. Like, what a moment for golf! And those are the types of things that you'll never get back. And Rory's talked about legacy and how that matters. And I just think Liv is doing things that are hurting the game. And I look at the Ryder Cup as such an amazing event. And I mean, the European Tour, forget the fact that they're losing Henrik Stenson, who again is irrelevant. Think about Sergio at the Ryder Cup, what he's meant to that Euro team. He'll never be a captain again. Think about Ian Poulter, what he's meant to that European Ryder Cup. He'll never be a captain. Lee Westwood. I mean, the list goes on. Like the European Ryder Cup team is going to be devastated from this. The U.S. team is going to take some hits for sure, but like none of those guys really matter. Like Bryson, totally possible. Koepka probably wouldn't even be on the team coming up. Like, the guys who are like good from the US, like they basically, I'm trying to think of like other ones. Patrick Reed, he had that one year where he was relevant, where we had that nice win. But other than that, Paul Casey, another guy, I know he's not like at the same level as the other ones I mentioned, but another European Ryder Cup guy who was on a lot of those winning teams. So yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame what they're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, my final point would be, you're talking about what Dan Rappaport said about it not being about the money this week. If it was about the money, Rory's not trying to hold that chip on 18 to get into a playoff. He's worried about finishing tying for second and saving himself $400,000. But he was trying to hold it because he wants to win the British Open. He doesn't care what the paycheck that comes with that is.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard, but we're just gonna have to go on and focus on making some money now. I don't want to get all worked up about live.
That's right. We're going to talk. Well, before we get into hopefully good vibes for the 3M Open, I do have to recap our picks from last week,
Don't do
which
it.
was
Don't do it.
a horror show. So Brian's picks, he had Taylor Gooch to miss the cut. He ended up finishing T34. He actually faded pretty hard on the weekend, but was up near the top 10 for the first two rounds. Your top 20 pick was Tiger. Sadly missed the cut. That wasn't the Tiger either of us expected to see. Top 10 pick was Fitzpatrick. As you mentioned, he, kind of didn't really put his foot on the gas on Sunday, ended up finishing T21. Rahm was your top 5 pick, and John Rahm really disappointed me this week, finished T34. And then obviously, as we talked about, we both had Rory to win, and that did not work out. My picks, also an offer for the week. I had Scheffler to miss the cut. He finished T21. I had Max Homa as a top 20. He missed the cut. I had Tony Finau to finish in the top 10. He tried to give me a little backdoor finish there, but he only really made his move on Sunday and ended up finished T28. Spieth was my top 5 pick. He also tried to backdoor a top 5, but he only made it to T8. And then again, I had Rory to win. So let's get that out of our minds. Let's have some good headspace and let's get into the 3M Open. We're headed to TPC Twin Cities in Blaine, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, I found out. Only the fourth time that this tournament has ever been played on the PGA Tour. It used to be a Champions Tour event, and then they converted it. So our past 3 champions, just for context, are Matthew Wolff, Michael Thompson, and Cameron Champ. So that tells you a little bit about what we're looking at here. But we're going to start off with miss the cut picks. Brian, who do you have to miss the cut this week?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to hate it because I know we got a little sneak peek of who our picks are going to be, but I think Ricky Fowler to me is a guy to target. You have every reason to think that Ricky might, make the cut this week. He really needs it to stay in the hunt for the Tour Championship and the playoffs. But I just really don't see it. He's been over in Scotland. He faded hard at the Scottish Open, 71-75 on the weekend, missed the cut at the Travelers. And the real thing that I'm concerned about for him is an area that used to be his strength, which is his putting. His putting has just become like so bad. 103rd, 168th in putting. And I just want to pull this up. He's only making from 5 feet 78.5% of his putts. That's 144th on tour. From 6 feet, 66.1%. That's 156 on tour. From 8 feet, 50%, 138th on tour. Those are the distances that you're going to have to make this week in order to be in contention and to make the cut. And what makes it even more scary for me going into this week is what I was alluding to, 153rd in shots gained off the tee. He's only hitting 56% of the fairways, and that's not a big deal here. From what I read, that it's a short rough. It's only like 3 inches. So that's not what I'm as concerned about, but he's 198th in greens and regulation percentage, and he's only hitting 62% of his greens. So when you combine those two elements with bad putting in a tournament where I believe the cut line is going to be under par, I'm nervous for Ricky. I'm a big Ricky guy, but his game just isn't there.
I will shed some optimism on Ricky Fowler here shortly because we're disagreeing on this one. So I'll save that. I'll go right into my miss the cut pick, which is actually one of the favorites this week, Adam Hadwin. I understand why he's the favorite, one of the favorites. He's played here twice and he's finished T6 and T4. So obviously good course history. And prior to a missed cut at the John Deere Classic, he was showing some decent form. He had I think he had a couple top 20s and like 3 straight top 40s. So seemed like he was rounding into form. And then he missed the cut at the John Deere Classic. But after the fact, I was reading up on a couple people who I follow in the golf world who had picked him to miss the cut despite that form. And I was like, well, why is that? And I looked deeper into his stats. When Adam Hadwin plays well, it's because he's accurate off the tee and because he strikes the ball well with his irons. And he's doing neither of those things well right now. He's actually losing. Let me see. I think he's losing strokes both off the tee and on approach over his last 20 rounds, which is not in his game. And he's getting everything with short game. And while short game is going to be important to score here, if you're not putting yourself in good spots, A, off the tee, and B, with your approach, you're not going to be in a good spot. And I always tend to, especially when someone's has as short of odds as Adam Hadwin in terms of, outright tickets, um, if they're gaining all their strokes around the green and on the green, that really worries me because that is the most volatile part of golf. And so I'm fading him and I'm going to take the good odds to miss the cut whenever they come out.
I love those stats. I didn't even really look into it because I just figured he was one of those guys who plays well here. But yeah, I mean, I think those are really interesting stats that I didn't even consider. So nice one.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Let's move into our top 20 picks, guys who we think are actually going to play well this week. Who is your top 20 pick?
Well, I know yours is going to be Ricky, so I'm excited for that. But Tom Hoagie, I'm actually really interested to see what he can do this week because he started off red hot this year. A win at Pebble Beach, a second at the American Express Championship. Like he's gotten some really, and he had a top 10 at the PGA Championship. He's missed 6 straight cuts since that top 10 at the PGA Championship. So I just feel like that's a little concerning for me. But I think, getting out of the Open, coming back here, trying to focus in on what makes him great, which is shots gained on the approach. He's 21st on the PGA Tour in that. And I really think that that's going to be a huge stat it's one of the stats I'm looking at this week, are the guys who are really going to be great with their approach. And also off the tee, 39 tee to green. This is a week where birdies are going to be super critical. The tournament founder actually said that, quote, we want birdies and train wrecks. I think you're going to get both with Hoagie, but he has made the 9th most birdies on tour this year. And I feel like that's going to put him in a position where he's going to not only make the long, 6 cut miss streak, but I also think he's got a chance for the top 20.
Yeah, I mean, my counterpoints to this were going to be things that you mentioned. I could not do this because of his recent form. It worries me way too much for a player who, yes, he played really well earlier in the year, but he doesn't have that proven long track record of success. So that worries me. But like you said, like his game is built on his ball striking, and like that's when he succeeds. And I think I agree with you. That's going to be critical this week. And I think the upside is there, and I think I think you're gonna get the price for that upside. So I mean, in that respect, I do like that, but it I would be worried about this pick, is what I'll say.
He's got to make the cut. No, he's got to make the cut first, right? Like I think
Right.
I'm looking at him as like a backdoor cover on that top 20, like a guy who's just gonna
Okay.
like kind of maybe shoot some sort of ridiculous shot, round on Saturday or something like that. But I'm nervous, but I targeted him because of that price. I feel like you're going to get longer odds on him.
And I can't argue with that. I'm a price chaser myself, so if you get the price, it might be worth it. As you mentioned, my top 20 pick this week is Ricky Fowler. So going directly against your miss the cut pick. Um, I understand everything you're saying. He's played extremely poor for a while now, but one of the things that has me feeling optimistic about Ricky Fowler is when you watched him last year, everything in the game was broken. Like there was nothing good about what he was doing on a golf course, and he looked nothing like the Ricky Fowler we came to know. And the putting is still a problem, but one of the things I've noticed statistically and just from the eye test is that now the problem is putting 4 rounds together, not so much putting anything in his golf game together. Like at the Scottish Open, he faded hard, but he played 2 rounds really well and was, kind of mixing it up a little bit. And that's progress. And that progress is leading into a point where he's on like basically the cut line for the FedEx Cup, the top 125, which leads to all the exemptions in your PGA Tour card and stuff like that.
Yep.
And a lot of his exemptions from winning the Players are starting to run out. So this is a crucial time for Ricky Fowler, and so I think the motivation is going to be there, and I think we're seeing that reflect in his game to where it's starting to come along more. And one of the things that I noticed statistically is that like I said, like last year, he was losing strokes basically across the board. And he's still losing strokes off the tee, but his approach game, his putting, and his on his approach game and with his putting, he's basically evened out to about tour average, which kind of goes to reflect the inconsistency that I've been seeing with him, where he'll be better than tour average for a couple rounds and then kind of fade back in the next couple rounds. So it's evening out overall in the statistical profile, and he's still a great. He's at his around the green game. He's actually gaining more than 0.3 strokes per round around the green. So he's finding some form. And I think at a time when he needs a good finish, I think, I saw plus 250 consensus odds for him to top 20. I like that number for a guy who's motivated and frankly in a field that's pretty weak.
Yeah, listen, Ricky's a guy who I could see putting together 2 rounds. The question is, when are those 2 rounds, right? Are they
Mm-hmm.
Thursday, Friday? Because if they're not Thursday, Friday, he's got major issues. So, I mean, that was the concern
Mm-hmm.
with me about Ricky. You're right. I think he's 127th on the list right now. He's got to move up a couple spots. He's going to be playing in every event he can over the next 3 weeks in order to do that. This is his best chance. Everything you said makes sense. I just don't trust him based on what I've seen from him on from the putter, because literally when he was
Mm-hmm.
playing well, it was his putter. People,
Oh yeah.
will remember all those shots on 17, but the reality was he made that eagle putt on 16 at the Players. That was like a
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous eagle putt that actually got that whole 16, 17, 18 thing going. And he got a lucky bounce there too with that wood, if that fairway wood, in case anybody else remembers that. But anyway, I like your points.
Yeah, I mean, we're both going with a little bit risky top 20 picks, but in a tournament like this, you kind of have to do that because there's no like big horses to hitch your wagon to.
Except the person I'm about to say right now for my top 10 pick,
That's right. Who is your top 10 pick, Brian?
Sung J M. I love him this week. I absolutely love him. I'm actually going to sprinkle a little bit on him to win. This is
Mm-hmm.
where, and in case you guys didn't see me last week, I said Matt Fitzpatrick was my horse. He was my 2 unit guy for a top 10. This is where I like making bets on top 10, as opposed to just always outright winner. I just think Im's game really sets up for the TPC Twin Cities. He's had some tough form recently, so in fairness, he had 2 missed cuts and he tied 81st at the Open. But before that, he had 4 top 15 finishes in 5 events. And then the stats to me are what really stand out. 12th on tour in strokes gained off the tee, 5th in strokes gained around the green, and then tied 13th in par 4 efficiency from 450 to 500 yards. Got that off of my boy Joe Summers on BetSided. I thought that was a really interesting stat, and it made me look deeper into it. And he's 8th on tour in par 4 scoring average, under par 3.97. This course has a lot of par 4s. There's only 3 par 3s and 4 par 3. Or I'm sorry, 4 par 3s, 3 par 5s. So the
Mm-hmm.
rest of them are par 4s, and I like that for his game. And I just feel like it really sets up well for what he's good at.
So I looked at Sanjay, and to play devil's advocate, the thing that worries me is the thing that worries you about Ricky. Over his last 20 rounds, he has lost 0.76 strokes per round with the putter. He is putting awfully right now, and his
Yeah.
ball striking has actually been pretty good still, but the putter has been ice cold. And so in a scoring fest, I worry about a top 10 play. But at the same time, he's played here once in 2019, finished T15, so he does have some good feels here, and I mean we know what type of player he is. He's an incredible ball striker, and I know you said you're valuing that. So if you're valuing that, and he can just even be average putting, I think he can top 10 in this field.
I'm gonna jump one in there though. I did look at his putting stats; they're terrible. But from inside 10 feet, he's 3rd on tour, 89% make. From 10 to 15 feet, he's 34th on tour, 35% make. So I get what you're saying, but I'm looking at it like, what are people going to be doing in this tournament
Hmm.
specifically? He's not staying away from pins. He's going to be in
Hmm.
that 15-foot range a lot. And that was the reason why I also looked at his putting. I know he's been terrible at putting, but if he can make some of those 15-footers, 10-footers, he's going to be right there.
That's a very good counterpoint, and I don't have any argument against that because I mean I didn't look at those stats. I just looked at the strokes gained numbers. So you're ahead of me on that. Of course, it wasn't my pick, so there's also that. So my top 10 pick is a little off the wall. I'm going with Christopher Gotterup. to finish in the top 10. Dude's a 22-year-old. He's the reigning Haskins Award winner, so he's a rookie on the PGA Tour. Dude absolutely bludgeons the ball off the tee. He averages 321 yards on his drives. Like, that's just absurd. Like, that's like legitimately like Bryson DeChambeau level stuff, only without the, self-servingness. Um, but he's actually popped a little bit lately, and the reason has been because he's gaining point 0.8 strokes on approach per round over his last 24 rounds, and he's also gaining with his putter. So he's starting to like feel the rest of his game instead of just being a guy who bludgeons it and then tries to figure it out what to do. And one of the things that we've seen from this tournament in its short history is, like I said, Matthew Wolff and Cam Champ are two of the previous winners here. And those are two guys that just hit the hell out of the ball off the tee, figure out where it goes, and then make a play from there. And that's exactly what this guy's been doing and trying to find it out. I saw plus 400 consensus odds, so I'm getting a little bit of a good price on that. And I think I understand going into this that because he's 22 and because he hits the ball so far and doesn't really care about accuracy, that it's a little bit of a volatile pick. But I'm willing to bet on the upside at that number.
Hey, listen, I like it. I actually saw somebody tweet about him recently, and I was like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And I looked him up, and I saw the same thing, that he just mollywops the ball. But I didn't know much else about him until what you just said. So if you feel confident in it, I feel confident in it. I didn't look enough into his background, but I did see somebody else tweet about him, a person who I follow who's in golf, and said some positive things about him as well. So we'll see what happens with Chris.
And going back to his recent form, he was T4 at the John Deere too recently.
Oh,
So I
that's
mean,
perfect. That's a good corollary too.
yeah. I've looked a lot at the John Deere and, well, a decent amount at the John Deere as a correlation because it's a very similar high scoring course. And so I like what he's capable of on this course. But let's go into top five. Who do you have as your top five pick?
Yeah, before we get into that, I want to say something
Okay,
about the Open one more time, about St. Andrews specifically. I'm so
absolutely.
stupid, and I realized this after the fact. The next time it's at St. Andrews, which might be 2030. I know it's usually in the 5-year rotation, which would be 2027, but it sounds like they want to get it back under the regular rotation. People who play well at Augusta that year always play well at St. Andrews that same year. I've like looked back at it now since it happened, and I never made that correlation. But anyway, we were just talking about correlations, and I wanted to mention that little tidbit that I found out at some point on like Friday or Saturday when I was looking at the
Well,
leaderboard, and I was like, holy shit, this is like everybody who did well at the Masters.
another tidbit, honestly, to if we're going to go back to the Open with tidbits and correlation, not necessarily correlation, but next time we go to St. Andrews, I'm going to basically disregard around the green game because you can
Yes.
putt from off the green, and that's why we saw Victor Hovland contend, and that's why a lot of people were off him is because his around the green game is so bad. They're like, "Oh, we're going to be chipping from these angles." I'm like, and then I watch him and I'm like, "Well, he's just putting it, and he's a good putter." So like, no wonder he's in contention. So that's another thing to keep in mind moving forward for the Open. But let's go back to Minnesota, I
back to
guess.
back to Minnesota, and I liked what you said about the big hitters. Tony Finau's my top 5 pick. Again, he's got the shortest odds as the winner. He really should win this week. I mean, he's the best player on the field by a pretty substantial margin, just because Matsuyama is not playing very well right now, and Finau is in pretty good form. He's got 3 top 5s in his last 8 tournaments. He's 21st in shots gained off the tee, 17th shots gained approach, and he's got the 24th best scoring average on par fours. Again, these are all things that I'm really valuing this week. I know he's a terrible putter. I don't have anything to really combat the putter issues that we've seen from him. I'll just say that I think that his overall game outside of the putting is so superior to the rest of this field, and his motivation, as we were talking about before, coming right off of the Open, coming all the way back over to Minnesota. I think it's there that he's making this trip. It shows you how much he wants to get this win, and I think it's going to matter a lot to him. And I think he's gonna. I really think he's gonna go all out and try and get the victory. But not really ready to go right there. I'm going to give him the top 5 finish. Maybe there'll be a little jet lag on Sunday. We'll see.
Yeah, so the jet lag is honestly the biggest worry I have for me with Tony Finau. The Scotland to Minnesota trip and then playing 4 days later, that's a tough one. So I'm not fading him by any means, but I'm just kind of staying away from a lot of the guys who played in the Open. But I will say, to your point, over his past 20 rounds, gaining over a half a stroke putting. So he's figured out the putter a little bit. And so if that happens and the jet lag
It's
isn't a
those short
factor,
ones
then
with him. It's those short
oh
putts
yeah,
with. It's like that. It's like those 5 footers that, like, if he made those, he'd be in contention and winning so many more times. He would have won the Canadian Open if he had putted well that
yep.
day.
But since the Canadian Open, that's basically the past 20 rounds, and that's when he's been, starting to find a little bit more form. So, I like where his game is at, and if he's not, fatigued, I'm with you on this. But that the fatigue is what would worry me. Um, Speaking the opposite of fatigue, I'm going with back to the well that I've been to a lot of times on this show with Davis Riley to finish in the top five. Davis Riley's kind of become my guy, and I feel like I have good reason for that. So the last time I backed him was at the Travelers, and he ended up finishing T64. He kind of faded on the weekend, and he was T31 at the U.S. Open the week before that. But I credit a lot of that to fatigue because when he got to the Travelers, that was his sixth tournament in the past 7 weeks,
Yep.
and prior to those two tournaments, he hadn't finished outside the top 13 in 2 months over six tournaments. So, dude was just on an absolute heater. He's another young guy who is just really finding his game. And even with those two rough finishes in his last two tournaments, he's second in this field in strokes gained total over the last 24 rounds. And that's even with his short game kind of being about tour average, even losing slightly around the green. And the funny thing is that was the strength early in his rookie season on the PGA Tour was he was really pouring it in around the greens, and his approach game and his ball striking off the tee weren't particularly good. And that's kind of flipped now, and he's ball striking the crap out of it, but isn't necessarily putting or chipping quite as well. But I don't think the chipping or put and is going to be that much of a factor. And if he's average and is striking the ball as well as he has, I think he's going to be in contention. I think that I saw plus 500 consensus odds for him to be in the top five. And I think with what he's shown over the past 3 or 4 months, I think that's way too big of a number for a player who's shown he's as talented as he is and has competed in fields that are frankly just a lot better than this.
Yeah, and listen, the fact that he had these couple weeks off, he didn't do all the traveling. That should definitely play into his hands. Yeah, that's a brutal stretch. I'm just looking at his run right now, from the Byron all the way to the Travelers. That's a long stretch, and right before that, he was in Mexico and he finished fifth. So, interesting pick,
Yep.
and I love those odds.
Yeah, I mean he's a guy who I backed a ton on this show, and he's made me a lot of money because I got on him early in that run where he was always inside the top 13. I bet him top 20 because he was north of plus 200 every time. And I was like, you're going to keep giving me this number. I'm going to keep cashing. So here we are. I'm also going to sprinkle on him to win. I saw his consensus odds about plus 2,200 to win. I think he's due to break out and get a win. Like a lot of these young guys, like your Cameron Youngs, I think he's in the same boat and that type of talent. So he's my top five pick this week, though. Let's get to our winner picks. Brian, who do you have winning?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a longer shot. I didn't want to go with somebody who, one of these top players, Hideki, Sunji, or Tony. I went with Maverick McNeely, and it's just based on what we've been discussing. The fact that he's hot right now, he's been playing well. He's played 3 weeks in a row, and he's done the travel. So he went from the John Deere over to Scotland and then back for the Barracuda. And so I really look at this like this guy is out there grinding right now, trying to get this win. He's been close. T8 at the John Deere, T16 at the Scottish with a great finish, by the way, a great Saturday, Sunday. And the Barracuda T9, and he actually played pretty poorly on Sunday. Before that, he had 3 rounds in the 60s, and he wound up shooting even par on Sunday to finish T9 at the Barracuda. Now, granted, not a great field, but it's kind of similar. Beyond that, he's actually putting. He's a good putter, right? 33rd in shots
Mm-hmm.
gained putting, 18th in birdie average, second in eagles per hole, and then 10th best in par 5 scoring average, and 12th on birdie or better percentage, with 24.1%. I mean, I look at that like these are the numbers of somebody who's going to come in there and make a lot of birdies, and I really do think that that's going to be the key to this week. It's you're going to have some blunders, you're going to have some mistakes, which McNeely certainly can make. But if he goes out there and shoots something in the low 60s, 64 or below, which he's done, which he's proven he can do, and he most recently did that at the John Deere. I really see him being a person who's in contention. And
Mhm.
I like the longer odds for him to win. He's also got the pedigree, former top player, or top amateur. I just think like this is the type of week where other people are kind of coming in as we've talked about, a little fatigued, a little unfocused. I think he knows what he needs to do in order to secure a lot of those exemptions for next year, and I think he's going to get it done.
I mean, I love Matt McNeely's game, so I can't even argue with this one. He's someone who I looked at a little bit too, so I'm I'm full throatedly in support of this pick. I don't have a devil's advocate to play on this one. I like it a lot. So we're gonna move to my pick, which is actually longer odds than yours. I'm going with Adam Svensson, another one of my guys who I've mentioned a couple times on this show. Um, Canadian who he popped a couple times earlier in the season. He was in contention at the Honda and then kind of faded a little bit. But over the past, I'd say, couple of months, he's really gotten back into form. He's coming into this tournament with 4 straight top 25 finishes, including a T6 at the Barbasol his last time out. So he's getting a little break, so he's not fatigued from playing as much as he normally does. But what's really been impressive is that when he was competing at the Honda and stuff, he has a ball striker's pedigree, and he's continued that. He's gaining 0.86 strokes on approach over his last 16 rounds and gaining zero point 0.2 off the tee. But what's really turned around and why he lost the Honda is because his putter was horrendous. He couldn't, like, the hole looked like the size of a thimble to him. It looked like at the Honda. Like, he could not put it anywhere near it. But over the last 16 rounds, when he started having these finishes, he's gaining 0.92 strokes per round on the green. So he's found something with that putting stroke that is putting him in contention. And honestly, I'm a little bit betting the number here because I think he's playing too well in relation to this field to be north of plus 4,000. Like, I think that's just an absurd number, and for a guy who's played as well and has I flirted with contention already, I love that number on him. I love his game. Like you said, he's a ball striker who can score, and with a hot putter that he's been showing recently, I think he's someone who could really, kind of surprise some people and contend to win this week.
Yeah, for those out there who are thinking about making a bet, that's definitely going to be the key, right? Approach shots and putting, like that's what this week is all about. If you mollywop the ball, you're going to have better opportunities to score on the approaches. But Svensson isn't somebody that I even really looked at coming into this. But I'll add one other note here. From 10 to 15 feet, which is the distance that I think a lot of these putts are going to be. He's 36 on tour, making almost
Mhm.
35% of those putts. I mean, if he's making 35% or more of those putts, he's going to be there at the top for sure.
Yep, and then I did not notice this previously, but he played here in 2019 before. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was on the Corn Ferry Tour at that point. It must have been a sponsors exemption or something, and he finished T15, and he's gotten a lot better as a player since then. So that makes me feel even better about
The perfect
this.
way to wrap this up.
All right, Brian, before we actually do wrap it up, can you recap your picks for me?
Yes, I have Ricky Fowler missing the cut, Tom Hoagie top 20, Sung J M top 10, Tony Finau top 5, and my winner pick is Maverick McNeely.
And then for me, I have Adam Hadwin missing the cut. I have Ricky Fowler for a top 20. I have Christopher Goddard to finish in the top 10. My guy Davis Riley to finish in the top 5 with a little sprinkle and an outright. And then Adam Svensson to win. Before we go, Brian, any overarching thoughts for the 3M Open that we need to get out of the way?
No, I'm really listen, it's always a letdown. It's like coming back from vacation when you go from the Open Championship to the 3M, but there's some talented players out there, and like I said, this matters to them, and we talked about Liv earlier. I think that's what I'm excited to watch. I'm honest, I'll probably check in on Friday and just see where the cut line is and see where the players are, and then watch it on Sunday. I won't be all in. I'm pretty fatigued from 4 days of watching, like 40 hours of golf. But I think it's a good field with actual stakes on the line for these
Mhm.
players that matter.
And I couldn't agree more. And I mean, frankly, I like watching, the Svensons, honestly, like a lot of the guys who I picked, the younger guys who have something to prove, go out there and prove it. I find that enjoyable.
Me too.
Please like and subscribe to the BetSided YouTube channel. We're here every week breaking down some golf picks. Brian, thank you again for joining us. And anything else you like to add?
Prayers up for a couple wins this week. Come on.
Amen. Pray to Gambler, as our good friend Ian would like to say. All right, everyone. Have a good day and enjoy the 3M Open.